Welcome to the ultimate crowdsourced personal finance show. This is your Friday Roundup.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Congratulations. You made it to Friday and your weekend is almost here. Hopefully you are commuting on the way home now, so you are really there. But either way, we're glad you're here and we want to share, as usual, the ideas from our Facebook community, give you some feedback, open up the floor, and provide you a show by the FIRE community for the FIRE community. And I have my co-host Brad here with me today. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great, Jonathan. I am still here on vacation, recording from my in-laws' basement. So this is round 2 of that.
I think you better be careful, man. Stacking Benjamins is going to come after you for trademark infringement if you keep trying to record in a basement.
Yeah, seriously. Well, I hear the pitter-patter of little kids' feet. We have, I think, 5 kids here today. So hopefully that doesn't come through on the recording. But yeah, otherwise the basement is lovely and very comfortable.
Very nice. Coming live from a basement in New York, it's Choose FI. Okay, so this past Monday was a little bit of a step away from our normal format. It was a little bit more of an open discussion. It was fun. I think it opened up the door to some new conversations down the road that will feel right at home in our community, where we really do want to know what's just going on behind the scenes in some cases. There's very few people that are more of an icon in our community than J.L. Collins. I think he makes the top maybe 5, 6, or 7 people. We tried to figure out who that Mount Rushmore of FIRE was, and it's very competitive, and I don't know that there's still an answer that's universally accepted, but certainly J.L. Collins has a place on that mount. And it was a lot of fun getting a chance to hear him talk about community. We all love community. You see this groundswell in our Facebook group talking about this desire to get a community of people that are not just in these arbitrary geographic locations, but are in a place that you can actually interact with them. This idea of just meeting up with like minds. And JL was one of the first people to do a meetup that really had a groundswell behind it. And he started the Chautauquas with Cheryl out of Ecuador. And that one has been wildly successful. And it was really cool to hear him talk about this idea and also to talk about how it's expanding to other places and reaching out to other geographic locations.
And yeah, Jonathan, actually, to take a step back, you talked about kind of like a behind the scenes look. I think people might find it interesting to know that like that entire segment on community that we just recorded that, and that was just a conversation between the 3 of us. We didn't even really anticipate that would make the show at the time. We were getting ready to talk to Jim, and that just kind of started, and it wound up going for 20 plus minutes. And it was just such compelling information from Jim and from our discussion that we really had to put it in. So that's why, putting it in that Ask Me Anything was the perfect way to go, in my opinion.
Yes. And I will just give myself a pat on the back for putting it all together to tell one continuous story. Well done, Jonathan. And to me, this idea that FI is not limited to the United States. It's not limited to California or Colorado or Virginia. It's this global phenomenon that has captivated the minds of thousands and tens of thousands of people all around the world. And as this show matures and we get a chance to really flesh out the perimeters of this story, we are going to get a chance to explore what some of the more nuanced approaches look like for the international people that are in our community, because there are some differences in how they approach some of their investment vehicles, some of their taxation rules, that sort of thing. We want to try to at some point get a chance to really explore it for everybody, just because we appreciate the fact that this is not something that's limited to our specific geographical region. But aside from that, and long before we'll ever be prepared to tackle something like that, we think that there will be meetups. There are already meetups happening in these places. There are right now, currently, there is one every year in Ecuador. that filled up. It's very hard to get a spot in that Ecuador Chautauqua. And there is now going to be just this month, there's going to be a Chautauqua in the UK. And Alan Donegan, a familiar face, is actually partnering with Jim to do that. And Alan, with the intensity that he puts into every project, that is just going to be an amazing experience. And that is then going to spread from just that one location out of the UK. It's going to spread around Europe. There will probably end up being multiple ones in Europe at some point. And then you also see this currently with Camp Mustache. And Camp Mustache obviously started out on the West Coast. And Steven, the organizer that we work with closely out of Florida, has organized a Southeast camp in Florida. And he went from having one camp last year to there was such a groundswell of support for people that wanted to be a part of that now that's expanding to 2 camps. And as I last heard it, there are now no spots available. He has filled up all of the spots in those camps. And we anticipate that we're going to need to do more of these events because the people that go to one inevitably want to go back the next year. And the people that didn't go but wish they had come on board. And it grows and it grows because finding community is addictive and you realize that you've been missing it this whole time. And once you have it, you don't want to let it go.
Yeah, it's extremely powerful. And yeah, to see just that Camp Mustache in Florida, that's a perfect example, right? You kind of alluded to it. The first week that he opened up for 2018 sold out very, very quickly because it was more than half the people from 2017's version just signed up again, right? Because it's seeing old friends. That's what it amounts to. And while that's wonderful, it doesn't leave many spots for new people, right? So after we mentioned it here on the podcast, there was this huge groundswell. And yeah, Steven very quickly realized that he could open up another week. And I think there's actually significantly more people going to that second option that he opened, which is actually the first weekend in January. And I think there are going to be over 60 people there. So that should be amazing. And what's cool, Jonathan, is you and I will both be there. And that'll be a lot of people who heard about it from Choose FI. So that's going to be a really neat experience to get to know a lot of the people who listen to our show.
And judging by my Facebook group, I will at least have a couple people there that also enjoy board games. So I will be bringing a couple with me as well. We got to figure that one out. But I'm very excited. Originally did not think that I was going to be able to go to that first week, but I'm very excited that we're both going to be able to go as well. Going to be a lot of fun. One of the things we're noticing is that aside from these full-on camps where you take a weekend or a few days out of your week and you go to one of these events, just the short local meetups seem to be gaining some traction and some momentum as well. So we actually did our first meetup here in Richmond just to try it out to see if there was any interest there. And there was a surprising amount of interest. I think it's something that probably we'll have to look into doing again and maybe stretching out to a few other locations. But I've been shocked just by the amount of people that are wanting to set up meetups in their own geographic location, from Seattle to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Atlanta, Georgia, to North Carolina, to the Midwest. I'm just seeing this overwhelming interest just for meeting up on a weekend for people that maybe are in the Facebook group that are of like mind, just to share some ideas and some time together. Very, very fascinating and fun to see. And I know Dave in our group actually just asked a simple question to our 2,000 plus members in our Facebook group. Where are you from? Over 645 responses of people wanting to, first of all, put it out there where they were geographically and also find others that were in a similar geographic location. So there is visceral interest in finding a local community.
Yeah, and I think what was really neat about that particular post was that people found others in like their little towns. And it was just like this serendipitous, holy cow, you live there too? And I mean, most people, unfortunately, in the FI community, you don't know that many people that live the same way, that think the same way, that consume the same websites and podcasts and things like that. And you're just kind of this little island unto yourself, or at least that's how you think of yourself. I know that's what I thought for years. And the simple fact is, it's not true. I know, like Jonathan kind of mentioned, there are dozens of people in the FI community just here in Richmond, Virginia. And this isn't a small place. There's well over 1 million people in the metro area. But I mean, those are just the people that I know, the people that live here, that listened to the podcast and reached out to me and said, hey, I'd be interested in a future meetup, right? Like that's a couple dozen people. And that, again, it's just this tiny sliver of the people that I actually know. Like who else is there that listens to the Mad Scientist podcast or reads Mr. Money Mustache? I'm sure there are many, many other dozens of people. If not, that might be undershooting by orders of magnitude. It could be thousands of people for all I know. And I suspect there's this type of groundswell in many, many cities throughout the country. And it's something that you and I want to work on to build these communities and to help people start these meetups. And more than that, it's not just the 2 or 3 hours to get together and have a little potluck and just kind of talk. That's all well and good. And that was really exciting, I know, for everybody there. And I think people got a lot out of it. But to me, it's more of like this community, and it's creating like an all-encompassing, not community in the sense of like a co-housing or something like that, but just knowing that there are these people there that are in your general vicinity who believe in the same thing and who are there to support you. And that might mean relying on each other for suggestions for a mechanic or something like we talked about on a prior episode, or just anything. You know, I mean, you could barter different skills. You could share tools. You could do all sorts of things that like quote unquote regular people would look down on, right? Like the Joneses next door might think it's insane that you're sharing a lawnmower, or you're sharing, like a buddy of mine who actually now listens to the podcast. He bought, Jonathan, have you ever looked into getting like spraying for mosquitoes? It's the craziest, most expensive thing I've ever seen. We had like ticks and mosquitoes, and I looked into it, and it was like $1,500 a year just to get sprayed for mosquitoes. And there was no chance on this earth that I was doing that. But what my buddy John did was he actually went out and bought like the industrial grade like sprayer, a suit, and the same chemicals. And it winds up being like he split it with like 5 buddies of his, and they each paid like $100 or something like that. And it's really cheap to buy the chemicals, and boom, just like that. That was like a very FI lifestyle type thing that he just intuitively did. And that was way before he even came across us or this concept. So like, I would love to see that writ large. Like, think about how much money many of us could save if we actually lived in a community of like-minded people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I have an article here that someone posted on our group that I hope you can just put in the show notes. But it was by Millennial Revolution back in February. And the title of the article was The 5 Types of People That You'll Meet on Your Way to FI. And in this article, it so perfectly encompassed the problem, but also the reason that these communities are swelling. And in this article, I'm just going to very briefly summarize it. She starts by saying that one of her readers had finally come out of the FI closet. I guess that's a thing. And he told his friends that he was working towards FI. And the amount of backlash hit him like a ton of bricks. Now, I think to some degree, a lot of us can identify with this, but this individual reader, he expressed the desire to build his village and be surrounded by like-minded people who would encourage him rather than tear him down on the goal. So Millennial Revolution took that as inspiration and then listed out the 5 types of people that she had met along her journey. And so Brad, would you like for me to take a couple minutes and tell you about the 5 types?
Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Okay. Number 1 was the frenemy. The frenemy pats you on the back while secretly gut punching you in the other. And when you tell them that you're retiring early, in the one breath, they say, well, good for you. And then they follow it up with, feel free to ask me for a job reference if you run out of money. So that's a passive aggressive person, right? Backhanded compliments, dripping in sarcasm.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful person to have in your life.
But they're there. I mean, most of us are going to be able to visualize somebody like this as we express these. And then you got the number 2 is the whiner. Now, the whiner thinks they're working hard and is going to make a big show out of working hard or being busy. The person that never takes accountability for anything, never actually takes that action. They're always identifying what the problem was, but it's from this constant set of limiting beliefs, and they never step outside of that and actually take that next step, which is having that point of awakening and then taking action on that. That's kind of the spin on the whiner from my perspective. Number 3 was the hypocrite. The person that anytime you pose what you're trying to do, they say, they're starving people in some third world country. How dare you succeed? And then anytime you say that you took action and you did these different things, they throw a list of excuses at you like, yeah, but you had great grandparents, and she makes the statement that the hypocrite fundamentally believes that being wealthy is an inherently evil prospect. After all, how can someone be rich knowing that there are so many poor people in the world? So the hypocrite gets to simultaneously demonize the rich while offloading responsibility for solving the world's problems onto the rich while excusing themselves from having to do anything themselves. First of all, Millennial Revolution, maybe you'll hear this plug. That's brilliant. And I can certainly visualize that. It's the people that you need to constantly tiptoe around how you say something, because you need to frame it in the exact right way, not to get scalded by the criticism, right? Maybe as a podcaster, I guess I can relate to the need to say things in the right way.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. I think there are many people like that where they just focus on the precise words and they miss like the actual larger point. And that just annoys the heck out of me. Like where you have to essentially talk or walk on eggshells around these people where, you know, if you say one word that's out of line, like they're just going to harp on that one word. And it's just such like an intellectually inconsistent perspective that it really just bothers me. Like when you miss the larger point because you're just so worried about like the political correctness of certain words. And I guess that I've noticed it, like I said, I've noticed it much more recently. So it's definitely fresh in my mind. And I can certainly appreciate Christie's writing here.
Now number 4 and number 5 are the ones that they're the meat of why I was so excited to talk about this. Number 4 is the closeted firer. I don't know if that firer. I'm struggling with that word. But anyways, the point is, the closeted firer has actually read all the same fire blogs as you. So for instance, it's that person that you meet at whatever event and you happen to throw out the word Mr. Money Mustache and you've known this person forever and suddenly they're like, oh yeah, I know about Mr. Money Mustache. Yeah, I read all that stuff. But it's never come up before. They've never mentioned it. And maybe they've never felt like they were able to genuinely step out of the stuff that they were researching secretly. But it's that they weren't going to be the first one to mention it, but they're genuinely excited when you mention it for the first time. And then number 5, and I think this is where we're trying to land with our Facebook group. This is where we're trying to land with our podcast, is the genuine friend. And this is the friend who actually, and she says, gasp, is happy for you. Once they found out you're retiring, they became genuinely interested in how you got here. And they want to learn everything about how this whole journey works, how this investing works. If they were number 4, closeted before, they have come out and they finally have someone to talk to about this stuff. And these are the exceptional friends that you want to keep for life because they're operating from a very positive place. They're wanting what's best for you. They're appreciating the choices that you've already made. And maybe they're even modeling some of their own choices after what you've already done. This is powerful. This is rewarding. This is uplifting. And this is a person that you want to hold on to. And I think that this is the meat of why these gatherings are so popular, because you actually can find a few of these people in your real life clustered together. It's almost overwhelming how relieving it is to find a group of these people and be able to create a community around it.
Yeah, it is extraordinarily powerful. And I know in my own personal experience, especially, I guess it's a little easier for me with this podcast, right? Like people kind of ask what I'm up to and I can send them to it. And frankly, when they hear this, you know, when we send people to the Pillars of Phi episode, number 21, that's usually the first one. It's like we always talk about, this is nothing revolutionary that we're doing. It's just kind of regular middle-class guys just being that little bit smarter. And like, I think when you send this to the right person, when you send this concept to the right friend or colleague or family member who might be predisposed to it anyway, then they hear it and it's like this aha moment. It's hard to disagree with, oh, wow, you mean I can be wealthier, happier, healthier, and have better relationships in my life? Who would say no to that, right? Like, Jonathan, I mean, that's crazy talk, right?
Crazy talk.
So to use my patented catchphrase here, but I know just even at my own pool this summer, I now have 3 different families who I've introduced this to just in passing. You know, this is not like an overt thing. Like, believe me, I am like a pretty private guy, and, you know, to be this kind of public figure is a little weird for me. So I'm not walking around with like Choose FI shirts on and, hey, talk to me about this. It's very low key, but, you know, people who would have been predisposed to it theoretically that I've just picked up on in conversation, I say, you know, oh, by the way, this is what I'm doing. Now I have 3 different families there in my pool who are all listening to this podcast, and in many cases listening to it together as spouses and are making changes in their lives. And it's really an amazing thing. It's hard to describe how much it means to me that people are taking this concept up when they otherwise wouldn't have been introduced to it. And Jonathan, at the end of every episode, you say, the fire is spreading, my friends. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about all of you out there. You know, so you, the audience, you're listening to this, like, we don't care about growing Choose FI, the podcast, you know, like that's not the goal here. The goal here is growing the FI movement and bringing this superpower to other people in our lives who we think can benefit greatly from it and who would be open to it, right? Like, you're not going to, the first person you're going to bring this to is not the guy next door who just bought a $80,000 Mercedes and spent $100,000 upgrading their kitchen. Like, that's probably not the person to start with. That doesn't mean throw them out. That doesn't mean they're a lost cause, but that's probably not the person to start with. But maybe the woman who sits in the cubicle next to you who has talked about 401ks and finances in passing, or, you know, the buddy that you have who maybe you've talked about this stuff with, and just in generally, like, that's the person to say like, all right, maybe the fire is spreading and maybe I personally can take action and help spread this just in my own community. And hey, talk to them for 5 minutes. Step outside your comfort zone. Listen, if I can do this, Brad, if I can step outside my comfort zone and talk to people in my real life about this, and certainly talk about it on the podcast hours upon end, you can take 5 minutes and be uncomfortable and talk to somebody about it. Just say, you talk about what's going on in your life. Well, this is what's going on in your life. And it's not a weird thing, right? Again, it's picking the right people. So you can send them an article from Mr. Money Mustache. You can send them our Pillars of Phi episode and just see what happens. You'll be shocked. And man, if you get that community at the end of the day, it will transform your life in ways you really can't comprehend. So I highly recommend just, again, step outside that comfort zone and just do it.
And I think what's really interesting as we continue to see this movement grow, you're going to see more and more enthusiasm for the idea of co-housing. In fact, I know Stephen, again, the organizer of the camp down in Florida, Brad, he wants to come up to Richmond and actually go with us and do a tour of a co-housing place that's actually local to us here in Richmond. So that's something that's on our radar. So we'll go check it out. Maybe we can report to you guys in a future episode. But as an aside from that, and really distancing itself from the idea of co-housing, is imagine the country club of Phi. Now, take that for what it's worth. And now let's take a step back from that and say that right now, Mr. Money Mustache is just now setting up a co-working and hangout space for Longmont area mustachian entrepreneurs. Now, hopefully Brad can link to this in the show notes, but this is actually happening. And once you get excited about the idea of finding a community, and you're not going to do co-housing, but you are very interested in the idea of sharing community and sharing resources, this should appeal to you. Now, he has actually purchased a storefront in the Longmont area, and he's going to set it up to be membership based with only 50 memberships made available. But instead of it costing like $25,000 for an entry fee or something ridiculous, in the Phi community, and many times money is not the primary motivator. So he's going to limit it to 50 memberships, and it's going to be available at the price of $50 per month. And for the price of membership, you're going to get a ridiculous list of features. But I can tell you that because our Phi community has many hundreds, if not thousands of millionaires in it spread all across the country, I can guarantee you that he has gotten requests from people, not just in Longmont, but all across the country who just want to be attached to this in some way, shape, or form. It's that appealing to us. It's that appealing to me in Richmond, Virginia, just to be a part of something like that. And so for that $50 a month, you get 24/7 key card access. You're going to get Wi-Fi. You're going to get free or cheap coffee, fitness-friendly snacks, a tool sharing library, an outdoor patio with grill, chairs, speakers, outdoor gym, barbell, squat rack, a beer brewing setup with a permanent kegerator so members with a skill in craft brewing can rotate through, a bike fixing station, talks and classes, and then the chance to just put your cool ideas in with another group of like-minded people. And that's ridiculously cheap. And so the point is that once this idea captures your imagination, you want to be a part of it in any way, shape, or form. And he's one of the leaders of our community. And this is a fantastic decision that he's made to try something like this. And I think that you will see similar models grow in the future. And the point won't necessarily be to monetize it. It is about community. It goes back to community. So I just have a lot of respect for what he's doing with this. And I think you're going to see a continued groundswell, people pursuing meetups, people pursuing these different camps and Chautauquas, and maybe people doing some form of co-housing or co-working spaces. Just a lot of fun to even be at the perimeters of an idea like this.
Yeah, and I saw that post from Pete a couple of days ago, and I was inspired. I think he actually did open it up to some people to potentially join from a distance, and it would more or less just be like, I tacitly support what he's doing there, and it's a tiny little membership fee, but I think I'm going to apply for it just to throw my support in, because it's just such a cool concept. And yeah, I mean, as you said, Pete is one of, if not the leader of this entire community. And yeah, hopefully he can spur people on to do this elsewhere. And Jonathan, who knows? Maybe we can do this in the Richmond community. Like we said, we've found dozens of people already, and we haven't really gone out of our way to find everyone in the Phi community. So who knows? This could be something that's plausible here. And that would be really, really exciting.
If you think I'm not already plotting a similar idea, you would be mistaken. Did I say that right? I may have had 2 double negatives in there, but it's absolutely something I'm interested in. And specifically for me, it's always been a dream of mine to build some sort of a woodworking shop. I know nothing about woodworking, but it's been one of those design your future type things. It's something that kind of scares me, but something that I'm also really excited about. But the idea of building one just for yourself seems so inefficient and so wasteful, especially when you have limited time to commit to that as a hobby. But the idea of what he's doing appeals to me at every level. If I could somehow find a group of like-minded individuals and start some sort of craft hobby shop where it has some of the features that he just mentioned, I would go all in on that hand. That sounds perfect at every level. All right, Brad, so let's go ahead and spin off. Let's talk about the community, bring in some feedback and bring in some voicemails and some ideas today. It is a crowdsourced show, so I have a few voicemails that I want to share with you. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first voicemail we want to play is from Chris today. And Chris says, in the 3 months that I've been listening to Choose FI, I have saved $140 some odd thousand. And he wants to share how. So let's take a look at this.
Hi, guys. My wife and I have been making major strides in our first couple months of our FI journey, and I wanted to share what we've done. I want to focus on the changes we made in order to reduce our expenses, which equates to well over 6 figures of savings from seemingly small changes. The first 2 months, we made changes to achieve $10,000 in savings per year. First thing we did is closely reviewed all of our subscriptions. We eliminated basic cable, Microsoft Office, Adobe Creative Cloud, a long-forgotten ESPN magazine subscription, PlayStation Live. This had minimal effect on our daily lives. They were all nice to haves, but we hardly had any time to use them in a way that enriched our lives. But we didn't eliminate everything. For instance, we just creatively reduced our spending for iCloud storage, Amazon Fresh, and Netflix, which we determined were used enough to justify. But the first month, our biggest impact was our grocery budget, which was originally $800. And we managed to reduce that by about 35% originally, just by thinking about how and when we purchased food to reduce the food that we were throwing out. The biggest impact of the first 2 months was our dining out, fast food, and coffee on the go expenses, which I have to thank my wife for agreeing to give up. But in doing so, we were able to save from that alone $5,820 per year, which all translated into savings. And that was even greater than our grocery budget savings. So all of that totaled a little over $10,000. But because we calculate permanent changes by compounding the changes over 10 years at 7%, what we've done in the first 60 days is actually worth $146,000 in total. So this 10-year span fits really nice into our projected fire date, which we originally estimated to be about 10 years. And I say originally because as we cut our spending, we cut our expenses that we're going to need in the future, which cuts down our timeline. So the 10 years at the moment is probably our worst case scenario. We also look at this from another interesting angle, because with the assumption of a 7% return, specifically over a 10-year period, anything that we save each of those 10 years will return the same amount forever afterwards. So in our case, the savings totaling, $147,000 or about $10,000 per year will actually return $10,000 every year after our lifestyle change, which is roughly 15% of our total desired income. You guys and the Choose FI Facebook community has been our motivation and knowledge base in making these and many other changes. So thank you and keep that fire going.
Man, I got this a couple weeks ago. How did we not play this sooner? That was awesome, Chris. Wow.
Yeah, that is truly amazing. That's 60 days, 60 short days. And they made changes that are going to save them $146,000+ over the next decade. And from the sound of it, it just is making their life a little bit more efficient, right? Getting rid of useless crap, saving on food, right? So there's not as much waste. I mean, we're not talking about moving from a 2,000 square foot house to a tiny home here, right? We're not talking about anything drastic. Like, this is just the at the margins type stuff. So, I mean, that's amazing. I wonder how many more of you out there are doing these kind of things or can do this, right? Like, just really review your spending and make these changes that aren't going to impact your life. They're not going to impact your happiness all that much. I mean, sure, it's great to grab a cup of coffee on the go every now and again, but man, they're saving $500 a month, I think is what he said, just in that kind of nonsense. Truly incredible. So a huge congratulations to you. And yeah, I mean, that's gonna move your fire date up very, very significantly. So a big congrats.
And Aaron sent us a voicemail as well. And he actually had a voicemail that we played about a month or so back. And he's got an additional thought for us relating to the JL Collins episode from a couple weeks back.
Hey guys, this is Aaron in San Diego. Came up with another interesting potential topic for discussion on the podcast. We talk a lot about VTSAX and how good of a vehicle it is for kind of the one-stop shop, easy investment decision. But I wanted to bring up yet another wrinkle in deciding how to allocate your savings in your investment portfolio. Obviously, VTSAX being just kind of a large cap blend fund offers a lot of exposure to many different companies, but the way that you guys present it sounds like a lot of the case for VTSAX is based on a long history of returns that are positive. So following that same logic, I'm curious why we haven't looked at other options that have the same sort of history of returns and potentially higher return potential. So for example, a couple of other Vanguard funds that might be worth looking at or incorporating into an investment portfolio are the Vanguard Mid Cap Index Fund, which is symbol VIMAX, and the Vanguard Small Cap Index Fund, symbol VSMAX. So, for example, the 10-year return of that mid cap fund is 7.48 versus the total stock market VTSAX of 7.37. So the mid cap fund is better there. And the small cap fund is even better than both of those at 7.83%. If you want to go back farther than 10 years, coincidentally, and nice for us, the inception date of the small cap fund and VTSAX are actually identical. They were both created on November 13th, 2000, based on Vanguard's own information. And since that inception, which is obviously a lot longer than 10 years, VTSAX returned 6.22% and the small cap fund returned 9.09%. So again, just to give a little bit more depth to the conversation and the investment decision, I appreciate that you guys really simplify it for people and just say, buy VTSAX, you'll be fine. But for those of us who are optimizers, which I think a lot of the FI community is, it might be worth looking at broadening that exposure. And if you want to kind of get the cherry on top, having a couple different funds gives you additional flexibility to do tax loss harvesting or tax gain harvesting. So just a couple of little bonuses on top there. Thanks again for the podcast and everything you guys do. Talk soon.
Yeah, this is an interesting voicemail from Aaron. I definitely appreciate the point of view. I think the most important thing that he's pointing out is that these other funds are also very low expense ratio funds, right? So these are Vanguard index funds. That's one of the major keys, right? Is that expense ratios and certainly advisory fees, those just destroy your return. So I think that point of view unquestionably is something I cannot disagree with. Now, it's an interesting point about the mid cap and small cap. And I'll give you my own thoughts here, is that the VTSAX, just by its nature, is almost a proxy for the S&P 500 fund. So because the VTSAX fund is cap weighted based on the market cap of the companies in that fund, almost by definition, the 500 or 600, whatever largest funds are going to make up 90+%. I think at last check, it was well over 90% of the fund. So in essence, the other, let's say, 3,000 companies in VTSAX are only making up 10% of your total fund. So that means that the Apples and Berkshire Hathaways of the world, when you buy VTSAX, you're buying a much more significant portion of those type of companies. That's just by its very nature. So I can definitely appreciate the thought of, hey, I want more exposure in the same manner, right? Like the same self-cleansing index fund like Jim Collins talks about with VTSAX. I can understand the desire to want more exposure to mid and small cap companies. So that makes intuitive sense to me. I got to be honest, this is the first time I'm hearing this voicemail. I haven't looked into the numbers. I haven't done the research. So I'm not prepared to give you an answer right now on whether this makes sense to me mathematically, but I do at least appreciate it. And it's none of the bad things that we're talking about, right? Which is like market timing. Clearly that has nothing to do with it. It's not buying high expense ratio funds. So that has nothing to do with this scenario. This is just, in Aaron's opinion, giving you more exposure by the nature of these funds to mid and small cap companies. And there is some appeal to me there. So whether I would look back on the results for 10 or 20 years and say, by definition, that means it's going to be better in the future, no, I wouldn't do that. That seems silly to me because past results are no prediction of future results. But again, if you think that you want more exposure to those smaller and medium-sized companies, then yeah, this is not a bad strategy to me at all.
Yeah, this is great. And I'm going to come back to this, but I want to pivot for a second and talk about some more feedback that we got from someone else in our Facebook group, Hardell. And he said that ChooseFI has a tendency to harp on the reasons to own VTSAX, despite the unnecessary risk of 100% stocks. And then he wanted us to mention that VWELX, which is Vanguard Wellington, beats every broad-based index fund since each fund's inception, since 1929. It's roughly a 65-35% stock bond allocation. It has a 0.25% active management fee. And he basically wanted us to note that it has outperformed VTSAX and wanted to know why that's not a pillar of FI. And we have latched hold of VTSAX as kind of an example of the overall principle that we want to get across to our community, which is broad-based index fund investing. And what Hard is mentioning with VWELX is an active fund. So while with what Aaron was saying, how do you want to distribute your allocation between either VTSAX or S&P 500 or mid cap or small cap, the argument between those two and what Hardell is saying are two different things. One goes to the idea of active management. The Wellington Fund does not achieve that goal for us. We want to use an index fund. Everything that we talk to you about with regards to index fund investing and taking active management out of that and the benefits of being in everything goes out the window when you go with active fund management. Now, I'm not saying that that is a bad choice. I got to say, as far as active funds go, it actually sounds pretty good. It's a very low fee. It has a very good long track record, and it seems like it's a reasonable mix of stocks to bonds, but it doesn't meet the criteria of what we're looking for in terms of a simple path to wealth because it is not an index fund. You have humans that are actively managing it and making decisions based on how they perceive that the market is turning. And the benefit of index funds are that by being in everything, you're just relying on the inexorable climb of the stock market. So go look at the stock market over any 10 or 20 year period, it goes up. But if you're in an active fund, because you're no longer following that bias, you're hopping in and out, you're grabbing things when they look like they're good deals. And it's not you, it's the fund manager doing this. You can no longer say with certainty that this is the course that your choice is going to make. And so that is why, while this fund may be fine for Hardell and it may be fine for the hundreds of thousands of other people that are using it, it cannot be a pillar of FI for us because it does not rely on the principles that we laid out in our earlier episodes. And I cannot with any confidence tell you whether or not the active manager is going to perform at the same level over the next 10 or 15 or 20 years that he did previously. I can't. And obviously with an index fund, I can't make any sort of guarantees for you either about its performance. But by reducing human error, we can lean more heavily on the natural biases of the stock market to do its thing and to climb. I don't really take issue with the fund itself. I think by being in the Wellington Fund, I think it's probably a fantastic fund. I think Hard is going to do extremely well. I have no problem with that. But in terms of why it's not a pillar of FI, it's not a pillar of FI because I personally, and Brad personally, and many in the FI community do not personally feel comfortable advising other people who value our opinion to invest in actively managed funds because past performance does not predict future performance. And when you're in active management, you're relying on a person, a human, and that human can be replaced. And ultimately it's a judgment call. And so with an index fund, you have reduced human error. You are relying on the inexorable climb of the market. And when you look at the market from the year 1900 or 1929 or whenever the stock market inception was to today, there is a shocking upward bias to that slope. So there's a difference there. When you come back to Aaron's conversation, that's completely different. That's what we call a difference inside the margins. All we're really talking about is our risk tolerance. That's essentially it. But it's still relying on the simple principles that we laid out with index fund investing. And, even Jim, and Ask Me Anything, talked a little bit about the chance to be more aggressive versus less aggressive. VTSAX fits his personal comfort zone. That works for him. You do not need to do necessarily VTSAX. Warren Buffett does S&P 500, which is probably a little bit more conservative than VTSAX. It's a margin, but in general, we advise broad-based index fund investings. And in fact, in my 401k, I don't have access to VTSAX. I had access to a S&P 500 index, and I had access to a mid cap and small cap. And so I did a percentage of those together that roughly resembled VTSAX. So I hope that clarifies things. We're not doctrinaire about VTSAX. There's plenty of room inside the margins to find an asset allocation and to find a broad-based index fund that meets the criteria and the risk tolerance that you hold. So that basically sums it up. Just wanted to clarify those 2 points. And Aaron and Hardell, thank you so much for reaching out to us with those comments. So Tinian sent me this voicemail, and he has a blog at lifeoutsidethebox.me. Fantastic writer. I've really enjoyed going through his content, and he's just started posting recently, so definitely check that out. But this voicemail was so valuable, and it's in context with what we've been talking about. I thought it was worth playing.
Hi guys, my name is Tinian. I'm calling from Northampton, Massachusetts. I'm about halfway through your Friday roundup for this most recent week here. I'm calling you Saturday morning, and I just wanted to let you guys in on my most recent addition to my life that I've found, and I've heard some very influential people talk about this. Is just using a little daily journal, and it takes me less than 5 minutes in the morning. And I ask myself a couple questions. I ask myself, what can I do to make someone else's day better? What can I do to make myself a better person? And then I make a simple statement about why I am grateful for the day. And so far I've found this to be a very rewarding, small addition to my day. And if at the end of the day, I have to answer to myself, and in fact, answer those questions. What did I do today to make someone else's day better? And what did I do to grow myself as a person? So I highly recommend trying this out for somebody. I think it's a great little life hack, and it just makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something and growing as a person every day. So thanks a lot, guys. Keep up the good work. All right, take care.
That is so insightful. And I just want to point out that, my friends, that is the opposite of grazing. That is what intentionality actually looks like. And if you're forcing yourself to, and I think there's a part of me that thinks that would be painful to start that process, but that's a sign that you're probably grazing through life and that you have some resistance just to take ownership of your actions. That simple mental task, which probably takes a total of 10 minutes a day, would force you out of that grazing comfort zone and push you to a better life.
And yeah, there's certainly a lot of research recently on the concept of gratitude and also priming yourself for positive mental thoughts. So I know Tim Ferriss has something that he calls the jar of awesome, which is basically like whenever anything amazing happens in his life, he just jots it down on a sheet of paper, almost like a fortune cookie type thing, throws it in this jar of awesome. And then whenever he's having a down period, which we all inevitably do, you know, even if we try to be better versions of ourselves, we all have down periods. That's just part of the human experience. But he just goes and reads a couple of these items from the jar of awesome. And it's hard to feel bad when you're sitting there smiling and laughing about all these amazing things that happened to you. So I know I tried to use the 5-minute journal, which might be what Tinian's using, or it sounds like he's doing his own version. But I found a lot of benefit from it. And in all honesty, I just kind of dropped it at some point, and I don't even know why. But this might be what spurs me on to pick it up again. So maybe that'll be my check-in next week of what I've done to make my life better.
So we have said we have intentionally included travel rewards as a pillar of FI. We think it's such a creative win that other people aren't considering. And I actually have a voicemail to play in a second to illustrate that point. But I wanted to encourage our audience because many of you discovered travel rewards for the first time through our site. Now, many of you are longtime travel reward seekers, but for those of you that just discovered it, we're very interested in your journey. We're very interested in your first trip, how it went. We'd love your feedback. Definitely, if you have questions about travel rewards, or you've taken a trip and you want to share it, send it to us at feedback@choosefi.com. And I should pause there and just highlight the fact you have one of the premier travel rewards experts in in the country, in the world, maybe, in Brad Barrett. And he is obviously one half of this show. And you really couldn't ask for a better podcast host to really answer these questions and give you his insight. So please, hit us with your thoughts and let us explore it for our audience and share those ideas with other people. We really do enjoy that conversation. It's a lot of fun. Now, as a second half of that, we've had a bunch of you ask us, frankly, we're getting a lot of value out of the content you are producing. How can we support you guys? And as many of you have correctly noticed and pointed out, we haven't brought any sponsors on board. We don't have any ads on the site. What the heck are you guys doing? And that's been very intentional because we want to focus on you, the user. And we think that we've been wildly successful with that. But if you would like to support us and support this show and what we're doing here, you absolutely can do that and just include us as part of your travel rewards journey. And basically, you would just do that when you decide to start executing on your travel rewards plan. You would just use our travel rewards credit card page. And to go there directly, we do have a banner ad on our website for that. And it's also, there's a link on our Facebook group. But if you want to just go directly to it, you can, at any point in time, you can just go to choosefi.com/cards, and that will take you directly to our page. So hopefully, in many cases, we've introduced you to this topic. We've showed you how to do it. And now we want to find out how it went. So please send us your thoughts, your ideas, your feedback at choosefi.com, or just join our Facebook group and ask your questions and give us your feedback there as well. And I should also mention that page is always going to have the best deal on cards, regardless of whether or not we get a commission from it or not. We have made a special effort to make sure that the absolute best offer on the web is available through those links. So those are sourced from many, many people, and we make sure you're always going to get the best deal on that site. So let me go ahead and just pause real quick and play this voicemail that we got. And again, it goes back to this idea of creativity. In the FI community, we're always thinking outside the box, and travel rewards is certainly a part of that. So this voicemail is from Marilyn, and Marilyn actually had the inspiration to start her side hustle, now her full-time business, while executing her travel rewards plan. So I hope you enjoy this.
Hey, Brad and Jonathan. So to add to Dominic's episode, I believe that one of the mental blocks to designing your future is lack of imagination. I feel strongly that redeeming travel rewards can help give more imagination to people. I'd like to share a quick story on how travel rewards help to open my eyes to possibilities for my future. I'm a dentist and I have a very unusual practice. I only do a laser procedure on babies having difficulty feeding called a lingual frenectomy. I was actually interviewed on Radical Personal Finance, how the stay-at-home mom makes working work for her, I believe the title was. So if you want to hear more details, you can listen to that. I love my practice, my work schedule, the income, and the fulfillment it provides. And I never would have had the guts to even try to start this practice had I not been travel hacking. So I didn't mention this in the original podcast I was interviewed on, but the idea for this practice came when I was staying at the Park Hyatt Milan. I just looked it up and it's $800 a night for this hotel. My husband and I stayed for completely free, and it was incredible. It took me out of my everyday life and staying in a real life fairy tale. And the thought came to me, if I could stay here for free with some planning and strategic credit card openings, what other amazing things could I do? And the idea for my practice, Infant Dental Center, started taking root. All of the negative thoughts like, dentists just don't do this, and financially that would never work, they started to melt away as I took my own authority, as Dominic would say, to create something specifically for me. And yes, the finances could work because I don't need all the expensive equipment in a regular office. I'm staying in Milan for free. Why couldn't I open a single procedure dental office? I still have the Park Hyatt Milan notepad where I sketched out the basic costs and outline for my practice. And 3 years later, we're still going strong. Have some imagination when thinking about your future and go travel somewhere on reward points.
Sounds like great advice. And if you want to access our rewards page, you can go to choosefi.com/cards.
Wow, that was amazing.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I love that voicemail from Marilyn. And yeah, I've known her for a couple years now, actually, through Travel Miles 101 and now through ChooseFI. So yeah, it's really cool to hear her voice. But I love how she looked at this with some creativity, right? And it's kind of one of these things that we say over and over which is looking at a problem a little bit differently and realizing like, why can't you do this, right? Like it all just ties together. You know, it's travel rewards. She's talking about Dominic's episode where there are definitely aspects of what Alan Donegan talked about from Pop-Up Business School, where why can't you do this? Why can't it work out where everybody else doesn't do a single procedure dental office? But if I'm sketching out the numbers, if I'm looking at the requirements for space and for equipment and whatnot, and the numbers work, then I don't care if nobody else is doing it. I've just figured out a secret, right? Like that's something that we look at in the FI community. And it's just being a little bit smarter than the next guy. So yeah, I absolutely love this. And yeah, we'll link to Marilyn's dental practice and that episode on radical personal finance in the show notes. And just real quick, since I think a lot of people, I know my brother and Andrew, who's one of our kind of super users in the Facebook group, I think both of them didn't really understand the show notes aspect. I know my brother for certain didn't, which is for every one of these episodes, every single one of our podcast episodes, we create a set of show notes, which is basically just a little bullet point of what we're talking about, but more importantly, links from the show. So anything that we talk about, something from someone else's website, a book, a resource, we link that up in the show notes. So you can just go to our website, choosefi.com. If you click on podcasts at the top, you can find every single one and click on it and find the pertinent link. So that is there. You don't have to listen 10 times and furiously write something down. We go to the effort of doing that for you. And also a real easy way to get that delivered directly to your email inbox is just go to choosefi.com/subscribe. And we'll send you the show notes every single time we publish on Monday and Friday.
All right, Brad, let's go ahead and read off a couple of frugal wins of the week. FWOTW. That will be a bumper sticker at some point. And if not a bumper sticker, certainly a viral hashtag. But in the meantime, if you did not know what FWOTW stands for, frugal win of the week. All right, let's do this. So Gwen from Fiery Millennials has a frugal win of the week for us. And she says, my boyfriend and I went camping for about $50 total this weekend. We borrowed a tent, used supplies we already had, and enjoyed a beautiful, relaxing trip for less than the cost of one night in a hotel. Yeah, that's definitely, again, goes back to that idea of experiences. That's very cool. Also, Michelle, frugal win of the week. I'm just starting on my travel rewards journey, but while I'm waiting for my ultimate rewards points to accumulate, I'm looking for other ways to save on travel. This week, I used Priceline to bid on hotel rooms in Atlanta. I got a 3.5-star Marriott that had an advertised price on its website of $175 for $65 a night. Congratulations, Michelle. And then I have one for you on prescription glasses. And Sarah says, my frugal win from a few weeks ago was that I wear glasses and contacts. If you're like me, you know how costly both can be, especially glasses. I wear my contacts most of the time and glasses here and there. A friend of mine introduced me to Zenni Optical. That's spelled Zenni Optical. Since I have worn glasses for so many years, I knew what style of frames to look for. I got a pair of prescription glasses for $40, all said and done, and they fit great. Their frame prices start at $7. I highly recommend this site. And Brad, I was actually shocked how many other people had said, oh yeah, of course, Zenni, that's who you got to use. And I had never heard of them, right? So it's amazing how somebody has figured out something that other people have latched onto, even our community. But like, this is a chance that maybe we can share it, and hopefully it'll save you some money.
Yeah, that's cool. I suspect there are many hundreds of these things that we can all benefit from. And yeah, it would be great if people can just share in the Facebook group like that. It's kind of hard to sometimes come up with these things out of thin air, but as you think of them or as you use some frugal hack in your life, like go to the Facebook group and post it, because I can guarantee you there are going to be a whole heck of a lot of people who are going to benefit from it.
All right. Well, that unfortunately, guys, we have run out of time. So that's going to bring this episode to a close. And we like to finish every episode by doing a drawing for a book or resource that Brad and I have found useful. Right now, we have 3 options available. We have the written book and the audiobook version of J.L. Collins' book, The Simple Path to Wealth. And we have a couple copies left of Dominic Cortuccio's book, Design Your Future. And we do a drawing each week. If you want to be a part of that drawing, you want to get a chance to win a copy of one of those resources, all you would need to do is just go to choosefi.com/iTunes, follow the directions there, and leave us a short written review. And once you've done that, you would just need to send us an email at feedback@choosefi.com. Letting us know that you left the review, and then also let us know what screen name you left it under so we can match it up. And then every Friday we announce our winners for a copy of those books. And we do one book for every 5 written reviews that we get. So Brad, how many winners do we have today?
All right, Jonathan, we have 2. And the first winner is Clarissa. And she said, thank you. Originally discovered your podcast after searching for discussions on minimalism. Thanks to your episode on frugality versus minimalism, my husband and I have been able to come to an understanding. His views are more in the realm of frugal living versus my minimalism tendencies. In another episode, I love the idea of Costco meal prep. We're in the works of getting our bread maker and planning our future meals. Hope to be FI by our mid-40s. Thank you for your podcast and keep up the good work.
That's very cool. Yeah, let me know how that goes. Obviously, I get very excited about meal planning around Costco. I'm actually continuing to try to level that up. Hopefully, I'll be able to share some of the things I'm trying with our Facebook group and the podcast in a future episode.
All right, and our second winner is Bradley.
All right, and Bradley says, best FIRE podcast, hands down. Choose FI is amazing. It frames the financial independence and early retirement topics into an easy to digest and very entertaining story. The interviewees are outstanding. They are able to take topics that can be confusing or hard to pay attention to and unpack them into a relaxing and enlightening hour of your day. My advice, join the Choose FI Facebook page as the conversations keep rolling after the podcast, and you can learn from and interact with other great minds in the FIRE community. Bradley, thank you so much. And yeah, I agree with you 100%, obviously. And for those of you that want to know how to do that, just go to choosefi.com/Facebook, follow the prompts, and we will send you a link to the private Facebook group. We would love to see you there. And I wanted to go ahead and just take a second and repeat what we mentioned from our Monday episode, that right now there's actually an extra dimension to this drawing. So between the 14th and the 28th of August, if you leave us an iTunes written review, or for those of you that have already left us an iTunes review, if you just will take that and copy that over to Stitcher. But for anybody that does that or is willing to do that, if you just follow the same rules that we use for the book drawing, where you just send us an email to feedback@ChooseFI and let us know that you left the review, we will actually enter you in a drawing to win a single ticket to the camp down in Florida, January 5th through the 8th. So I believe it's 3 nights. This will cover your lodging and food. All your expenses are covered. You are responsible for transportation to get down there. Bonus points, so if you use travel rewards to get there. But yeah, very simple. Steven, the director of the camp, is a huge fan of the podcast. He's a huge fan of the community of Choose FI, and he wanted to partner with us on this. So he reserved a ticket to offer up in this drawing. And if you would like to be eligible to win that, all you got to do, just leave us a written review between now and the 28th of August. And then just shoot us an email to feedback@choosefi.com, letting us know what screen name you left it under, so that we can match you up. And specifically, if you want us to enter you in the drawing for camp, just let us know that you are interested in being put in that drawing. And you're still in the drawing for the books as well. We're going to keep that going the whole time. But in addition to that, we have this single ticket. So we'll aggregate all the reviews that we got between those 2 dates, and we will announce the winner on the Friday roundup, I believe, which is September 1st. So if that appeals to you, again, we have recognized this entire time that by you being willing to give us a written review, you're putting your stamp of approval on this show and you're helping us out. But this is just another way that Steven is able to give back, and also we're able to give back as well. So you are the lifeblood of the show, and we continue to thank you so much. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.